Can everyone hear me? If you can, just, can you give me a thumbs up? All right, good deal. Good deal. Well, good morning. Welcome to our information sharing session this morning. For those of you that may not know who I am Chad Allgood. I am one of the co-directors of the Division of Early Childhood Care and Development here at the Mississippi Department of Human Services. Got a couple of others from my team on here. Laura Dixon, who is one of the deputy directors for the division. She's also our policy director. Most of you know Laura as well. And then also joining us, I have Angela Crockett, who is the other deputy director of the division. And most of you know Angela. She is also the director of our child care payment program. We've got some other folks from that work with us that do training in TA, as well as representatives from the Resource and Referral Network. Thank you all for joining this morning. So what I'm going to do, those of you that may be new to our information sharing sessions, the way this works is I will share some updates from the division with everybody. Just go through some new information that we've got, and then the remainder of the session, that usually takes about 10 or 15 minutes. And then the remainder of the session, I give you all an opportunity to ask questions. So, and the way we do the question asking is if you do have a question, you can enter it in the chat box. And then Laura will go through and she acts as moderator and she will ask your questions. But before we get started with the questions, I am just going to give you a few updates. So Laura, will you pop those up on the screen for me, please? Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to say is that we have received word from the Social Science Research Center that the market rate survey was completed. Thank you all for participating in that survey. They are now the information that they gathered. They are now analyzing that and getting the report ready to submit to us. But we are going to be using that information to take a look at our rates and see if we possibly need to change what our reimbursement rates are. You know, that the market rate survey is the single best way that we can ensure that we're getting that we have up-to-date information from you all on what your rates are, and making sure that we're reimbursing you at a level that is sufficient. So thank you all for participating in that. Next, please. There was also a question about us being able to use our CURSA funds to cover copayments. There was some language in the American Rescue Plan that gave us pause to know whether or not we would be able to continue to use CURSA funding to cover copayments. We did receive word from the feds, and I'm happy to say that we are going to be able to use our CURSA funds to continue covering copayments. And we are going to continue to cover copayments through December of 2021, so December of this year, and that will likely continue beyond December. When we, later this year, we'll announce how much longer we will continue to cover copayments. Right now, we're looking to see, what that's costing us each month and how long we'll be able to sustain that. But we will be able to use CURSA funding to be able to sustain that as long as possible. While I'm speaking of CURSA funding, there's a couple of other programs that we've put in place that we are going to continue to keep in place also. Laura, if you'll pop those up for me. So the other things that we are going to definitely continue through December of 2021, again, likely further, we are going to continue to reimburse providers based on enrollment. And we are also going to continue to reimburse at that enhanced rate. Now, again, keep in mind, when we do receive the market rate survey results, that may change. The reimbursement rates may change. But until we get those numbers and make that determination, we are going to continue to reimburse at that enhanced rate, which is approximately 25% more than the regular rate. And Laura, we can go into the next one. So another thing that we are going to be doing, and we're going to be using our cursive funds for this, we are going to be issuing grants to providers to help cover the cost of the full-time care that you provided for school agers. And when I say this, I am in fact talking about, last year, many of you had school agers that were attending your programs full-time because they were not able to go to school. So we are going to be reimbursing you for that cost. What we're going to do is, if you had school agers that were attending, we were paying you a part-time rate for those school agers, but we're going to pay you the difference between what the full-time rate and what the part-time rate would have been. We are working out the way the application process for that. It's going to be fairly simple. But you will have to actually apply to receive that grant. But we do have more information coming on that soon. I do want to point out, if you charged parents the difference. So, let's say that you did charge them the difference between what we were paying you versus your full-time rate, you cannot receive this grant. You can only receive this grant if you were not charging parents the difference between the full-time rate and the part-time rate. But we will have more information coming on that soon. This last point I'm very excited to announce. We are going to be bringing back the Mississippi Director's Credential, and I'm going to be sharing the flyer with you all in the chat box before the session ends. As a matter of fact, I see Robin on here. I don't know if Tammy's on here. She may be further down. I can't see her. But Robin and Tammy.
I'm here.
Okay, there you are.
I'm here.
All right.
Hey.
All right. So Robin and Tammy are with us. So we recently brought them on board, and they are offering what you all know as the business TA piece, the leadership TA. So we are going to be able to bring back the Director's Credential. Like I said, I think I can share this as a file in the desktop, let's see if this works. Okay. There's the flyer for the new Director's Credential class. Now I do want to point out, this is nothing new. The Mississippi Director's Credential has been around for many, many years. As a matter of fact, when I first started doing professional development, I worked for an organization known as the Mississippi Forum on Children and Families under Jane Boykin. She was the president of the forum, and that was the birthplace of the Director's Credential. And this is the same Director's Credential that is listed in licensure as one of the potential qualifications for directors. It's been around for many, many years. It has been slightly updated, but just in the way that as new information has come available about child development and business leadership and everything, but it is the same credential. It is still a 9-module course. You have 8 modules of coursework, and then there is what we call the integrated module, which is module 9, which is the fun test that everybody looks forward to taking at the end of it. But it is the exact same class. It is nothing new. We have not developed anything that was not already in place. The only thing that we're doing is we're bringing it back. We have had many, many providers that have been asking when we're going to be able to make this class available again, because they have people in their programs that they are wanting to look at promoting or take that next step in their career. So we're very, very excited that we're going to be able to offer this again. When I saw the flyer for this last week, it made me smile really big, because this program is near and dear to my heart. I think it's a fantastic program. So really, really glad that we're going to be bringing that back. The last thing that I want to mention before we, and then we'll open up for questions that here in just a few minutes. We are in the process of finalizing the Arpa Stabilization Grant application process. We have one more piece of information that we're working on getting, that relates to the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And then we will be finalizing the application process. And these are these stabilization grants. This is the big chunk of money that we received. It's approximately $319 million. And every single cent of that is going to be going to child care directors, or child care programs, excuse me. So we are going to be opening up those applications. Most likely it will be October when we will get those going. And more to come on that as far as like what the application process is going to look like. We are going to offer support in getting applications completed, questions that you may have, etc. Before we jump into the questions, I did want to talk with you all about one other thing, and this relates to our state plan. We had our public hearing last week. Those of you that came and participated, those of you that gave comment, we do really appreciate the comments. The only way that we can get better is if we hear from you all about what you all need and what we can do to serve you better. I do want to address. There were some current concerns that were voiced about the state plan, which I do fully understand these concerns, and I want to talk to those concerns for just a moment. With our state plan, it was mentioned that this state plan is not what many would consider to be a complete plan for the next 3 years. And just to be completely honest, that is true. The state plan does not represent a fully developed, fully realized 3-year plan. And the reason for that is because it is a reflection of where we are in the state right now. We are in a state of rebuilding. Mississippi, we've gone through another system change, and we are in the process of working on rebuilding that system itself. And I'm not just talking about looking at the way that we address quality. I'm talking about the support system for that as well. The training, the technical assistance, a lot of those pieces were lost a few years ago. And some of them we've been able to bring those back in pieces. And some of those, we have not been able to bring back. And it is essential support for childcare providers. Because we're doing this rebuilding, we have to remember that building any kind of system, it takes time. And one of the things, another concern that was brought forward was that not enough attention was given to the state plan. And this, and it was doing childcare providers a disservice. I want to say it's actually just the opposite. Our office, when we think about, when we were looking at what we could do with our state plan, we had a couple of options. One option was to try to rush and put things in place that we would throw into the state plan. But to do that would not give us the time that we need to do what we have pledged to do, and that is bring the voice of the child care providers forward. As we rebuild this system, and I'm talking about across the board, the way we address quality, but then also the support for that. I, as do the rest of my team here, we feel that to make that successful, we must have your voice. We must have the voice of the child care providers. We must have your input. You have to, it's essential that you be a partner in that, in those decisions. To do that, it's going to take time. And therefore, we made the decision with the state plan to basically just kind of hold steady with where we are. Also being aware of the fact that we're still dealing with the pandemic. Throwing a bunch of new requirements at childcare providers at this point in time was just, I just don't feel that it would be what's best for our childcare providers, for the children that they serve, the families that they serve. Therefore, when we looked at the way the plan was, we were like, we're going to hold steady. We are keeping the standard designation in place because that's what we have until we can look at something else. But to do this new system, again, we're going to make sure that we have your voice. I will say with the state plan, something else that was mentioned was outdated, erroneous information. One of the things that was said was that it had our old address. Now, let me tell you, we may not know everything about everything, but I promise you, we do know where we're located. We know where our address is. The reason that the address is the 750 State Street location is our division has moved back to that building. That move took place earlier this year. We were at a building that was on Lamar Street in downtown Jackson. We have now moved back to our original location. We are now back in the 750 State Street location. Something else that was mentioned was references to the OCY credential. Let me explain why that could not be changed either. The reason that that could not be changed is OCY is what the director's credential used to be referenced as. And as a matter of fact, OCY is still listed in child care licensure. It is still one of the names because people that took the director's credential back then, when it was still the OCY credential, if you look at their certificate that's hanging on their wall, it says OCY director's credential. It is important that we recognize that effort. And it is important that we don't do anything that would make child care providers think that credential is still not relevant. And it's just a reference. And it is still in the child care licensing regs. It is listed under the child care director. When you look at the potential credentials that someone can use, OCY is still listed. OCY is also still listed in the TANF manual. So that is a reference that we could not just do away with. It had to remain. I will say we did catch there, you all caught for us, there were still a couple of references to the comprehensive designation. Those have been removed. As I have said multiple times in our meetings, we are not going to pursue the comprehensive designation. We are keeping standard in place because it is what we have. Now that being said, we are not requiring directors that have already gone through the standard designation. We're not requiring you to go back through that designation. Only your brand new providers that are coming on to the child care payment program that are brand new, they will go through the standard designation process, but we're not requiring anybody to renew their standard designation. Anything else, that might refer to outdated, erroneous information, again, we're not perfect. We may not catch everything. We may not, there are elements of the state plan, like I said, we're not perfect. That's why we hold the public hearing so that we can get public comment, so that we can get your feedback on the state plan. How can we make it better? How can we make it stronger? The state plan itself is not perfect. And again, it does reference it reflects on where we are in the state and that we are rebuilding. As we move forward, another concern that has been brought forward, and I do very much understand this concern, is that, once we have the state plan in place, it is what it is. And, what's to say that we don't make changes that, later to the state plan? Well, since we've already had the public hearing and everything, the concern is, well, MDHS, DECCD can just make changes and just move forward and put us through whatever they see as necessary. I give you my word that will not happen. As we make changes to the state plan, and I'm being recorded, put this in writing, I've talked to my administration as well. As we move forward with making changes to the state plan, we will continue to have public hearings and receive public comment when we make changes to the state plan. It is what is right. It is what is right by you all. It is how we can do our part to make sure that we're meeting your needs and that we are, whatever we do does not inadvertently harm you. Anything that we can do to put in place to support you, that's what we're about. And that's what we're going to do as we build this new system. So that's what I have to say about that. Again, I do, very much appreciate you all giving us input on the state plan as we continue to move forward, as we continue to make changes to the state plan in the future, as we continue to have, public meetings, public hearings for public comment, and even before then, please continue to give us suggestions about how we can make our state plan strong in a way to support you all. Here in the next couple of months, I'm going to be doing a roadshow, and I'll be announcing more details on the roadshow later, where I intend to go around the state to different parts of the state. I will meet with, we will do a face-to-face meeting, but even at each of these meetings, I will also give people the opportunity to conference in, to attend virtually. For those of you that may feel more comfortable attending virtually, that is definitely something that we're going to make an option. And this is all in the interest of getting feedback from you all on our quality system. I think we need to have just some very honest, open conversations about what quality looks like. Quality is a very subjective term. It looks like it looks different to different people. But I think it's very important that we have discussions about that and what you all think is the best way for us to look at addressing quality. What the feds require is that we have a quality initiative. They do not require us to have a, quote, quality rating improvement system. And I've talked to the feds about the fact that I feel like it's more important that we support providers in their efforts to increase quality. Not go in, not point fingers, not say you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. It's important that we put a supportive system in place, not a punitive system. So that's, I'll stop preaching about all that. That's what I have to say about the quality system, about the state plan. Again, moving forward, we will be making changes, and we're going to make sure that as we make these changes, that you all are going to have the opportunity to weigh in on those changes and do so before they become officially part of the state plan. So I'm going to wrap that. I'm going to stop talking at this point, and we will open up for questions.
Okay. Chad, can you give an update on direct deposit, please?
Yes, direct deposit is here. You should have received, if you're one of the child care payment program, if you're on the child care payment program, you should have received an email and then also probably a letter in the mail. Am I right about that, Angela?
Yes. Yes, Chad, you are correct. Providers had received an email with the code, and they have to do the registration and complete the process through the instructions that were given on the letter. If they did not complete it all the way through, then their direct deposit has not been updated on our side, in our system, to start that process for them. So they'll have to complete the the entire process.
Okay.
And we've had a lot of providers that started, but it's like in the middle, or if they've had some type of error. If you've had an error, just email me and I can work through trying to get you set up in a different way, but they will need to make sure that they complete that process.
Okay. So those of you who may not have heard, if you're having difficulty getting signed up, maybe even if you missed the email, if you'll contact Angela, she can help you get set up with direct deposit.
Okay, and Chad, can you speak on where we are about dropping child support requirements for services?
With the child support requirement, I, along with Vicky and my administration, we made our recommendation to Mr. Bob Anderson. He took that recommendation to the governor's office. We're waiting on a response.
Some of these questions I know are being addressed directly with the folks that are asking them when they're specific to their center or their business. So I'm looking to see if we have any that are not being addressed by either Lydia or Angela. Doesn't look like there are any more questions right now. Yes, there's a question about will the recording be available after the meeting? Yes, the recording will be available on the website. We're working on getting all of those posted back where they used to live on the InSpark site, but yes.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that real quickly. Prior to just a few months ago, in the InSpark was running what we called the child care, consumer education website for the state. They're no longer doing so, and it was actually, the website was the CCAC website. It doubled as both the website for the State Early Childhood Advisory Council and the consumer education website for the CCDF program. We have migrated the CCDF consumer education website back to MDHS's website. When we get the CCAC website is not up and going. When we get the link, we're in our website, not only did we migrate it back, but the agency itself is going through redoing the whole website as well. Because if you've been there, you know that it's a little difficult to navigate. It's hard to find links and things like that. So they're working on that process also. When we do get the info session information back up, we'll send an email out to everybody that's on our listserv to make sure that they get the link to be able to find these. And we'll post all the past recordings as well of the info sessions.
Okay.
We had all of the information sharing sessions. We did have a page that was on the CCAC page, and then the migration process, that page went away. So we are actively working with our communications division to get that back up and going.
Okay, Chad, what is the DECCD recommendation regarding the child support question that was delivered to the governor's office?
I really don't want to share that. I'm not at liberty to share that. Not that I don't want to share it, but I'm not really at liberty to share that until the decision is finalized, what that is, what the recommendation was. I will say we did strongly take into account information that was shared with us. And we do really appreciate that information. And we did strongly take that information into account when we made our recommendation.
Okay, there are no more questions at this time, so we'll wait a little bit to see if some more come in.
Those of you that may be coming in a little bit later, if you do have a question, if you'll just type it in the chat box, then Laura will relay that question to me. Do we have anything else? Anybody else? Any other questions? As I say, last call.
Yes, I have a question.
If you do have a question, type it in the chat box and Laura will
Okay.
relay that to me.
Okay.
Hold on. Hold on.
Chad, there's a question about when do we apply for a grant and how? I'm not sure if they're talking about which one of the grants on the screen they're referring to, whether it's the one for school-age children or the Arpa stabilization grants.
Okay. For both of those grants, we will be sending out email with complete instructions for completing each of those grants is available. So watch your email. It will, I mean, it's probably going to be at least, I would say it won't be this week when we get those released. The ARPA, the stabilization grants, those will likely begin in October. So I'm assuming we will probably be we'll begin sending out correspondence sometime in August and then in September. The school age, we should have some information on that a little bit sooner, but just be watching your email and we'll have an update on during our next information sharing session as well. But if you want to, if you want to keep an update, if you do need an update in a week or so, if you haven't heard from us, if you want to shoot an email to the CC payment, they can relay that, relay your question to myself or Angela or Laura.
Chad, there's a new question that's asking if you could explain again what the grants are briefly.
Okay. So the grant, when you see it's number 3, or it's the 4th bullet point down about the grant for providing or covering the cost of full-time care to school-age children. So what that grant will be, we're going to use our CARSA dollars for that. Those of you that had school-age children that attended full-time during the pandemic, and I know some of you did have school agers that were attending during the school year when they normally would have been in school, but the schools were closed because of COVID, and the children didn't have anywhere else to go. So they were parents may have been bringing them to your center. You may have been caring for them full day. If you did not charge parents the difference between our part-time rate and the full-time rate, you will be eligible to apply for that grant. So what we will do is we will pay you the difference between what we gave you for the part-time rate. We will pay you the difference between the full-time and the part-time rate. The ARPA stabilization grant, that is, those were grants that were authorized in the American Rescue Plan. Mississippi received approximately $319 million. These are going to be very large scale grants that we're going to be issuing to child care providers, and they're going to be based on your operating costs. What we're going to do is we're going to have an estimate based on the size of your center, that there will be a payment that will be based on those estimates. You can choose to accept that estimate that we put forward when you apply, or if you feel that that estimate is not sufficient, you will have the option of submitting documentation to verify your operating cost as an alternative, and then we will base the amount on your operating cost. But just bear in mind that if you do not go with the estimate, you will be required to submit documentation that shows your operating cost, and that is not our requirement. That is a requirement from the federal government. They're requiring us to base it on the operating cost, and we do have to receive proof, documented proof of what your operating costs are to issue the reimbursement payment. So you have a couple of options. You can go with the estimate. If you choose not to go with the estimate, you can submit the documentation that shows what your operating costs are, and we will base the grant, the amount of money based on your operating costs. I don't know, did that help clarify at all?
Okay, Chad, is the grant for full-time school-age children only for past services or for current services and services moving forward? Do you want me to address that?
Yes.
Okay, so we are looking at going back and beginning with March of 20 and doing the remaining 2 months for March, April, May, and then picking back up with August of 20 through this entire past school year. We don't have a real clear sense from districts yet what the fall will look like for them. So right now the piece looks at March 20 through May 2021. Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
So Chad, there's a question about the estimated process again, and I know that there's probably a whole lot of questions about ARPA stabilization, and so I didn't know if you wanted to just touch on the training process and how that will be our main vehicle for information when this comes out, and talk a little bit about that, so it maybe helps to sort of put people at ease in terms of the application process and what it will mean for them and how they can be successful with it.
So when you apply for the grant, and we are going to have our folks from our resource and referral system, as well as our business advisors, they're going to offer help with the application process, questions, things that you may have. There are two options when you apply for the grant for you to receive whatever the amount is going to be. When the stabilization funds were written into the American Rescue Plan, what the Fed said was we were to help support child care providers by issuing what they call stabilization grants to stabilize child care in our state. That was where the word came from. And the feds require that these grants be based on the operating cost of the child care centers. So each of you, we have to issue you a grant, a stabilization grant, but to know how much to give you, we have to base it on what your operating costs are. Now, the feds gave us a couple of options where we could either use an estimated amount, like what we do is we put together like a formula where we say if you're this size, if you have the certain things in place, this is what your estimated what you'd be estimated to have in terms of operating cost. You can choose that estimate if you want to. If you don't think that the estimate is sufficient for you, you will have the option of submitting documentation to support your operating costs if you believe that the estimate doesn't adequately cover your expenses. So you have a couple of options when you apply for the grant, and we will have folks that will help explain the differences between the two. We are going to offer training on the application process itself, and then as you're completing the application, we'll have folks on hand to help you with completing it. When we're getting ready to roll out the application, we are going to send out instructions that will provide guidance on where to go to apply, how to apply, if you have questions, who you can contact to help you through that process. We do appreciate, with it being a grant, there is a process to it, and it can get a little overwhelming, which is why we want to make sure we have support for you all to help you complete the process.
So Chad, there's a question about reimbursement rates. So I don't know if you want to revisit that really quickly. There's a question about if they will remain at the end of the year or into 2024.
Right now, the way it stands, we are going to offer the enhanced rate at least through, was it the enhanced rate or the enrollment-based reimbursement, Laura, or both?
It just says reimburse enhancement rates.
Okay. So yeah, so as of right now, the way it stands, we are guaranteeing that we will continue to reimburse at the enhanced rate and reimburse based on enrollment through December of this year. It will likely continue further when we get, one of the things that we're having to do is we're wanting to make sure that we're staying responsive. So, we are putting these support programs out there. We're evaluating how we're doing as these support pieces that we put in place. We're kind of evaluating them as we move forward. And then later this year, we'll release information about how much longer we'll continue those support programs. It is very, very likely that we are going to continue to offer those supports beyond December of 2021. But something else to keep in mind is we are about to get the results of our market rate survey, and we're not sure what those results are going to be just yet. We do anticipate there's going to be a change in our reimbursement rates. We do anticipate that it is going to increase. So that's something else that we just kind of have to keep in mind, as we're putting these things in place. But we will definitely continue to cover co-payments. We will continue to cover the enrollment-based reimbursement and reimbursing at the enhanced rate through December of this year. Now, the enhanced rate may change after we get the results of the market rate survey. Again, it will likely go up. We have any other questions?
Yeah, there's another question about the grant here, wanting to know if the grant will cover enrollment numbers or attendance, and what will the length of the grant be. But again, if you could just specify if you are talking about the stabilization grant or the school age grant. I know it's confusing when we have when we're issuing multiple opportunities, but if you could help us, if you could specify that, then we'll know how to answer that question a little bit better. The stabilization grants.
all of that will be explained when we issue the when we issue the information. We'll explain what all goes into the estimates. We're still in the process of finalizing what that's going to be. We do have some information that we're getting from the Office of Child Nutrition as it relates to the Child and Adult Care Food Program, just so we can solidify what those estimates are likely going to be. But I will say, with operating costs, yes, we do have to take into account what your capacity is and things like that. All right, we've got about 7 more minutes left. Do we have any other questions? All right, Laura, do we have any other questions coming through?
No, I'm not seeing anything else.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we're gonna call it for the meeting. If you do have any other questions, feel free to email us. I hope y'all are staying cool in this heat. It's getting pretty intense out there. I walk outside and I feel like I already need another shower. So yeah, y'all stay cool this summer. Again, thank you all so much for your time today. We do really appreciate you all taking the time to come and participate in our information sharing sessions. We're going to continue these. They've been very helpful both on our end, and I think it gives you all an opportunity to get some information from us too. So we do thank y'all so much. Thank you all for what you're doing. Y'all please, y'all take care and stay safe, and we'll see you next month. Okay. All right. Bye.